This will be a day long remembered. Now I am the master.
Welcome to another episode of Legends and Theories. And welcome to a review of Legacy of the Force Betrayal. And this is honestly a start of a series I was really excited for. And especially since after I finished New Jedi Order, because I didn't know Dark Nest was in between, and then I was like decently excited for that, but this is what I've been looking forward for. The downfall of Jason Solo, his fall to Darth Kaitis, and his eventual death. So I am really excited to be reading through that, and it definitely does not disappoint. Unlike with few of the previous ones I talked about, the start of Dark Nest was a little weak, and then I just had to suffer through Splinter of the Mind's Eye right before I read this, but I basically powered through that in like a few days just so I could get to this. And honestly, yeah, it was just a really, really great time. I love how Jason's being depicted in this for now, and continuing into just a quick spoiler for book two, it's doing pretty well with that, with him having this debate if he should become a Sith, and it's just so interesting to see just how much this character has changed, where he was just so sympathetic in the New Jedi Order series. He didn't want to cause any death and wanted to save as much life as possible. And now he's totally fine ending lives for the greater good and is acting more Sith like even before he is offered to join the Sith Order by Lumaya. And really, just everything with him where he is clearly being manipulated into this, and he is clearly wanting to take this power, but he's basically still has morals, and he has to slowly talk himself into this. And it's just really hard to not talk about the scene I just read in book two, thinking of this, but still, it's just really compelling with him and him just getting that offer, him listening to it, and his one friend and former apprentice going and being like, Jason, don't be crazy. You don't need to do this, and if you do, you're gonna become a monster. And Jason's like, no, 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 I need to hear her out. And then he goes and kills his former apprentice. It is honestly just so tragic. And I mean, I know it's not the worst thing he does. I know a list of the big things, including his murder of Mara Jade and him bombing Kashyyyk. But just as his first step, this is definitely a bad one, and he betrayed someone who didn't, well, at least partially fall in love with him, and also was trained by him. So that's just really, really bad for him already, and he is just so compelling in this. It is just so interesting because they are taking their time to take Jason and have him fall to the dark side. This isn't something like Revenge of the Sith where Anakin's fall in that is compelling, but it has so much less time because it's a single movie. And with this one, I believe that the book where he fully falls to the dark side and becomes a Sith is book four or five. So he just has that time to go and just fall to the dark side. On a related note to that, the interesting thing about his Sith name was it was a part of a vote, And I actually did a poll that one of the other names that he had because YouTube only allows 4 options now. So if you take a look at the community tab, you'll see there is the 4 names that were the runner-ups for his alternate name of Darth Kitus. So you can go take a look at that and vote for your favorite one and say if you like it more than Kitus or not. But just going back into this, honestly, just really, really great with Jason, and that's only like about a third of the story. The rest of it is just really great. I love this entire thing. Or really, it's not even a third of the story. It's like the back half of Jason's story. This is going into the just the rest of it. This entire thing with Corellian wanting independence and just the absolute worst cousin ever of Threk and Celstolo going and pushing this war to happen just so he could gain more power. Where both sides really they just want peace and well Celstolo and then Lumaya in a effort just to push Jason into becoming Kitus. Or, obviously he's not Kitus yet, but that's the name he'll eventually take. Even she has this vision of who Jason will become, and her basically saying, like, talking to it and saying, like, I'm going to create you, and he's like, yeah, and I'll soon have a name. So, honestly, that's another thing that is really interesting. I think that just everything with Corellia it's super compelling. It is putting our characters in such an awkward position where there's a lot of major characters that are Corellians, like Wedge and Han, as the two biggest ones. And both of them, they really don't like that the Galactic Alliance is doing this, and they definitely see the flaws in it. Although Wedge is fully doing this just to more or less be petty because some idiot, or most likely Umaya, ordered for him to be taken into custody and treated as poorly as possible, and he was basically kept in a prison cell just because they didn't want him to help the Corellians, which in turn pushed him to wanting to help the Corellians just because of how much the government he literally helped form, both in terms of the New Republic and salvage and reform in the Yuzhan Vong War, one that he is a very great hero of, and if it wasn't for him, the New Republic literally wouldn't be able to exist with him assisting Luke in the first Death Star attack, being one of the 2 people to destroy the second Death Star, and even being the person to successfully lead the liberation of Coruscant that legitimizes the New Republic as a government, well, at least until it was taken back by Palpatine's Dark Empire. But still, he's just such a major character. He helps in so many battles, and him forming both Rogue and Wraith Squadron are well, reform Rogue Squadron since Luke is the one who initially formed Rogue Squadron. But him reforming Rogue Squadron and fully creating Wraith Squadron are just 2 super important details, and I like how much of a character he is in this. Obviously, this is by one of the people who did the X-Wing books, and that's a big reason too why Wedge has such a major role in this. The same goes for the next one, where that's by the person who did the Republic Commando books, and that's tying a bunch into that with an entire storyline with Boba Fett. So they're able to play into their strengths are more accurately the characters they really enjoy to work with, and honestly, I'm completely fine with that. So far, it's just super compelling to get these stories, and this is another little tease. The entire Boba Fett thing in the next book is That's another really compelling thing to have. And going back to Wedge here, really love him as a character. And then there's also, I think, the best thing is with Han and him just being really conflicted. Where, yeah, this is the government he helped form, but it's also going and oppressing his people and not letting them get the freedom that they want. So he's in a really interesting position here where he goes and commits some subtle treason where he joins Wedge Antilles in his attack against the Galactic Alliance and forcing them to go and give up control of the Corellian system where they took one of the planets hostage. And man, there's just so much more to talk about in this. I don't remember too much of what Jaina was up to in this. Just that she was fighting alongside with the Galactic Alliance forces. But going into the other really crazy part, which just shows how the Reconcile Solo is just the absolute worst. We have the entire thing with Centerpoint Station being reactivated. I do remember what Jaina was up to, and she was on the planet of Corellia for most of this, and then the Starfighter Squadron towards the end, where they were all betrayed and their attack was warned of, and her attack was forced to be a failure, and she was shot down. But yeah, everything with Jaina, I mean, it was fine. I know she gets a lot more development later in the series where she's forced to train alongside the Mandalorians, but she isn't a huge focus in this book, which is fine for me since, well, one, I know she has a little bit more later on, and two, I know that she turns out to be the final of the solo kids to actually, be alive, so she has even more books after this for her to be developed even more as a character. But just going into this, going back to Centerpoint Station, really great story as this is really the only one that's able to be a complete success where, at least up to a certain point, where they have the ability to disable it. And although they do initially want to destroy it, just the absolute worst thing Sal Solar did was to create a droid brain that made itself think it was Anakin Solo. And, well, thankfully, Jason didn't come in on this because I think he probably would have just went into a rage based on how he was and just completely executed Sal Solo for this before he even got a chance to talk. Oh yeah, he still came to that decision that he should have killed him, but that was just like a few seconds too slow, and he wasn't able to reach him. So I was going back to this absolutely just tragic moment as, I mean, he's like 12 or 13 in this. I know he's 13 in the next book, but I don't remember exactly when his birthday is, but this is next book's a few weeks after, so I think he's still 13 in this. And he has to talk to the dead cousin that, well, he really didn't know. Yeah, he would have met him, but he would have been a baby, and for most of that time, he would have been sent away to the Maw, so he has met Anakin, but never really got to know him. And after just a few minutes of talking to this droid, he's just absolutely devastated by meeting it and talking to it. And it's just really well done, and him forcing himself to have to reveal to this droid that it isn't the real Anakin Solo, and that Anakin Solo would have never stood for this. And then this droid goes and it sacrifices itself. And even though it's just a machine, Ben is still sad because it did seem like it was a real person, and from what he could tell, it did mimic Anakin Solo really well. So yeah, honestly, that was just really, really great and well done. And just continuing on with so much more there is. There's so many great stuff throughout it. There is the character Silent Tillies, who is at first undercover as not necessarily undercover, but she has a fake name so she can not be getting special treatment because of who her father was. And eventually is revealed when, well, and just another interesting thing where Solo tells Wedge to turn his daughter into double agent, and he says, "I'm not going to do that. I'm going to not force my daughter to do anything." And Han, who is secretly observing their later, basically points out that Wedge just signed his death warrant by Solo, who is just this, as I said, absolutely terrible person. So there's that, and then just so much more crazy and insane stuff where she is confronted by a Corellian spy that she is forced to kill because she wants to take him into custody instead of becoming a spy. He reaches for her weapon and she's forced to fire on him. And then there's the entire thing where she gets questioned and then she reveals who she truly is, and then she eventually is cleared of all wrongdoing and has to go into with her real name since it's basically exposed to everyone. And then there's a really interesting part at the end where, well, her father and Han are attacking the Galactic Alliance, and Leia's committing a little bit of treason herself, trying to make sure everyone's safe and letting Han know, kind of safe ways to go, but also not exactly that, but she's like, redirecting forces to stay away from Han and Wedge, and then also she lets Han know that, well, at first, that Wedge's daughter is the one piloting the ship attacking them. So that makes Han have to be a lot more careful and not being able to tell Wedge, so just in case their comms are being monitored, since there's gonna be no way for him to actually know that without having a spy on his side. He is basically having to fight her off and has to do everything he can to not kill her because he knows that Wedge would never forgive him. And then also Jaina shows up, so yeah, small galaxy, but it just makes that fight really compelling where they don't have to, they can't go and attack these people, and Wedge is actually able to figure out it is Jaina because of her more insane piloting skills because of her being force sensitive. But Han has to later tell Wedge, yeah, your daughter was attacking us. So yeah, that was really interesting. And then there's another like side like interesting, but not like earth-shattering thing is there's this little scene in here where at the beginning Jason's trying to take someone down and they get launched up and just absolutely obliterated in wires as their body is just split apart. And yeah, it's one of those things where it's just such a brutal death and just completely out of nowhere. But it was also just honestly pretty interesting. But yeah, honestly, such a great and enjoyable book. So many interesting characters, and I probably haven't even covered everything, but basically all the major points. Besides one, which I nearly forgot, which is Luke's visions of Jason, and that was honestly pretty interesting, where he's seeing this dark figure, which Lumina confirms is Jason and what he could become as a Sith Lord, and everything with that is it's just super interesting as Jason has to go and he sees these visions, and eventually he is basically having to fight a bunch of Vision characters also, where everyone does, where Mara has to fight who she doesn't know is Ben, and Jason is fighting Luke, and Luke is shown a vision of Jason who looks messed up, and Mara shown a vision of Ben who looks messed up, and same goes for the other way around. But yeah, honestly, that was also just really interesting. As the entire thing with Luke sort of seeing who Jason will become, but it not being fully set in stone. It's also pretty interesting, and honestly, I'm just having such a great time with it. I think that this story is super compelling. It's definitely long, so it took me a little bit to read through it. And I finished it a few days ago and have got a good amount into book two because the story is just really great. But yeah, honestly, super enjoyable book, really enjoyable series, and as you can tell, I talked about it for a while. I'm currently at like 20 something minutes. My timer kind of froze up, but yeah, honestly, just really, really great. I really enjoyed it, as you can tell. So please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you on the next episode of Legends and Theories. Thank you for watching this episode of Legends and Theories. Please subscribe, like the video, share the video, leave a comment, check out the video on screen, and may the Force be with you.